Happy Monday, everybody. And I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving. So this week, we're going to continue with the series of the petrodollar. And this week, we're going to cover petrodollar 2.0. And if you didn't watch last week's video, go back and watch it because we kind of go over the basic points of what the petrodollar was. And briefly, it was when Henry Kissinger went to Saudi Arabia and brokered a deal that required Saudi Arabia to sell their oil only with US dollars in exchange for US protection. And that's worked. And that created global demand for the US dollar. And countries around the world had to trade their currencies for US dollars, making us the reserve currency of the world, so that they could buy oil and therefore run their economy. And Saudi Arabia has been a major player. Now, it wasn't just Saudi Arabia. That deal spread to all of OPEC because as Saudi Arabia does, so does OPEC for the most part. And regardless, Saudi Arabia is just a major player. Now, since then, the United States has become a major oil producer as well. But you can't ignore Saudi Arabia and you can't ignore oil around the world. And so what we reviewed last week is that relationship has been deteriorating, and Saudi Arabia was no longer exclusively selling oil with dollars, but also with other currencies, namely the Chinese Yuan. And they have since started building other relationships with the other BRICS nations. And if you recall from other videos, the BRICS countries, 5 countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, they have since expanded, and many other countries, mostly in the Middle East, Asia, and in Africa. But one of those countries was Iran. China also since then has brokered the first peace deal in almost a decade between Saudi Arabia and Iran, therefore creating greater cohesion with the BRICS nations. And even though Saudi Arabia isn't part of BRICS formally, they're friendly with them. We don't want that. Iran, not a friend of ours, and you've got the whole BRICS countries, and like Greg's video was talking about with Russia, it's a global chessboard that we're trying to negotiate with. So that's why Trump brought Prince Salman over to the US. Okay, so now that's where petrodollar 2.0 picks up, because I think what's happening here is Trump's trying to reestablish the petrodollar to try to give US currency a little more life and kick that can down the road. Because as you recall from that chart I showed last week, this is the percentage of US dollars in terms of global reserves. Back in 2000, it was over 70%. And as of today, it's just over 55%. So not a good trend. And there's only so much time that's going to keep going. So Trump brings Prince Salman to Washington. They make a deal. What's that deal? Prince Salman is going to slow down selling oil. He didn't commit to exclusively selling oil with US dollars, but he is going to slow down. And in exchange, he's going to buy the money that he does sell with US dollars. He's going to buy F-35s, nuclear technology, but it has to be non-military nuclear technology, AI technology, and investing in US companies. So there is a quid pro quo there. The other thing, though, is that this does put a little bit of a wedge of the United States in between Saudi Arabia and Iran, Saudi Arabia and China, Saudi Arabia and Russia, which we don't want to build greater cohesion over there. Here's the difference, though, and I'm going to do you a favor. You can pause this video, or after the video, do a Google search. Search Henry Kissinger, King Faisal, and pull up the images. See what you see. They're great photos. I'm not going to show you just because of copyright laws, but you can search for it yourself. It shows a smug, nerdy-looking Henry Kissinger and a very dour King Faisal who does not look impressed. Those were the terms of the original petrodollar. The US had the upper hand. Now, Google President Trump and Prince Salman, Salman. Very different photo. Both of them are smiling. It's more of a peer-to-peer relationship. And that's the difference between today and this is a different world today. Now, you've got to study history to make sense of the present, but today is a different world. This was less of a hardball negotiation like Henry Kissinger did, and more of a please come to the table negotiation. Now, I'm not going to say it's not good for the US, it is, but it's not as good for the US as it used to be. Here's the other thing is that I think this will also encourage the central banks to continue to diversify their reserves. We've already seen that happening. They've been getting rid of US treasuries. They've been stocking up on gold as their reserves for their own central banks. I think that's going to continue. I don't think that this new deal will reverse that trend. It will keep up the exchange currencies for US dollars, which does allow the United States to continue to go into more debt. However, the writing's on the wall. We can't just keep printing dollars without anything backing it. And now we're asking Saudi Arabia to come to the table. Here's the last thing. What President Trump did then at the very end of the meeting is that he named Saudi Arabia officially as a non-NATO ally. That's a big deal. Now, it is informal. It's an informal title, but it's an informal title we've given to several countries, including Saudi Arabia in the past. So he's trying to bring Saudi Arabia back into the fold. We'll see how long it lasts. However, Saudi Arabia still has relationships with the BRICS nations. Meanwhile, what does that mean? It means the price of gold will continue to go up. But like Greg was saying, I don't really think it's the price of gold that's going up. It's the demand for gold will continue to go up. Meanwhile, the purchasing power of the dollar will continue to go down, which in our bank accounts means the price of gold goes up and our investments goes up. So, and it's not just gold, it will be all hard assets, but gold is a good proxy for all of them. All right. With that, you all have a great week. See you next week.